Hello everyone, this is Tetrafolium, and I'm here today to bring to you a Pokemon in ADV. You don't see these very often anymore. I know I've fallen off of these, but I did kind of promise in my Rock Resist video that if we got to 1100 subscribers that I would do a video on Swampert. Now granted that there was not a lot of support for that, not to say that there was protest to it, but I mean, if you guys want me to do any particular Pokemon, let me know in the comments. I know that somebody requested Suicune, and we probably could do that as well. But I figured that to pay a little bit of homage to the team tournament that I was in, the team that I was a part of, the Enlightened EndPerts, we will use Endeavor Swampert and give a little bit of a guide on how to use it. But before we get too far into it, I want to give a big shout out to some of the members of my team. Juke and Spreek, fantastic gamers. I would say they are your favorite Pokemon player's favorite Pokemon player, and they were fantastic captains. Eternally Wandering, you'll probably see them on top of ladder a lot of times, but they're a fantastic player, a fantastic teammate as well, always willing to offer up some information, which was cool. And then Mint Yerb, as you know, probably if you watch Revival tournaments, is the thumbnail artist for many of the videos, and he is just also a fantastic guy, and one of the most prolific slop players, which we will be talking about slop a little bit. It is an archetype kind of invented by this person that we're also shouting out here, Fredazi, who was not on my team, but was instrumental to some of our success because he was quite helpful in some of the team building channels. So shout outs to Fredazi as well. So let's get on with the video as normal. This is the viability rankings from 2024. We're still waiting for the 2025 viability rankings to be made available. I think we might be waiting until 2026 though. But I don't imagine much is going to change at the top. Perhaps Blissey will get a little bit more love, but as it stands, Swampert is the number 4 Pokemon. I know that there are some who would put it as high as number 2. Mostly people who are haters on either Skarmory or Tyranitar. But number 3 is also a very common placement for Swampert as well. It is a fantastic Pokemon that brings a lot of teams together because it's got so many good traits, which we will, of course, be talking about a little bit in this video. But as always, with these types of videos, I like to do a little comment question. So what I'm going to ask this time is, what is your favorite starter, competitively speaking? And it could be in any generation or format. In Generation 3, I mean, there's not very much competition because Swampert is by far and away the best. Charizard is also pretty good, and there are certainly some others that are usable, like Venusaur, Blaziken, I guess. Blastoise could be used as well. Sceptile, I have used that one before. I don't know if I love it in this generation, but I mean, I'm gonna keep it simple and say Swampert for this generation. Though of all time in any format, I do really like Rillaboom in Gen 8. I've also liked Incineroar in Gen 8 in lower tiers like UU. I think that parting shot's pretty cool, especially in singles. I mean, I know the menace that it is in doubles, but I don't really play a lot of VGC, so it could be those. Greninja was really fun to play with in Gen 7 as well. But I guess I'll say maybe just overall competitively, I guess I'll say Rillaboom in Gen 8. But we've done a little bit of glazing on Swampert, but I'm here actually to tell you that it's the worst of the water starters. And the reason why, it doesn't even appear in Pokepark Wii Pikachu's Adventure. It has to rely on its little baby form Mudkip to carry its representation. So That's a lot of pressure, I think, on Mudkip. Very unfairly put when the other starters, or the other water starters, are making a pretty strong impression here. For starters, Mudkip, the only of the line that's available in Poke Park, can't even participate in any of the attractions, which is kind of tragic. Like, that's the whole point of getting a lot of these Pokemon in many cases. Otherwise, it's just like filler stat padding for your friendship uh, book, which, I mean, is what I think most of your friends on Instagram are like. But the other water types, by comparison, being Blastoise, Feraligatr, and Empoleon, have a lot more impressive showings. So in Gyarados' Aqua Dash, Feraligatr is the fourth best at performing this particular attraction, as evidenced by the target time that you have to complete to uh, get the reward for doing it with this Pokemon. Uh, it's only behind Floatzel, some mystery Pokemon, and Manaphy, which, I mean, the running theme is that some legendary slash mythical Pokemon is going to be the best at performing a particular attraction. Empoleon's Snow Slider is another attraction where Blastoise has a pretty impressive showing, being the fourth best, just behind Glaceon and Empoleon and Suicune. Empoleon, of course, is his attraction. He's got to show out, and he is really, really good, being the second best at it, although Suicune is kind of destroying the competition, being a full 5 seconds faster than Empoleon. And if you were wondering who is the second best at performing at Gyarados' Aqua Dash, it is not Gyarados, it is, in fact, also Empoleon. So Empoleon might just be the GOAT. Swampert, nowhere to be found, so we're going to have to dock a lot of points for that. And put him at 4th out of 4 potential water-type starters. But, I mean, in actuality, you're here for ADV OU. We could talk about Pokepark some other time. In ADV OU, Swampert actually has a very good distribution of stats. I talked about how Metagross is one of the best. Swampert might just be right behind it. This is the stat distribution for Swampert, a pretty respectable 535 base stat total, and decently evenly distributed stats. We do cheat a little bit on the speed, but if you're going to cheat on one stat, speed, probably you could get away with. It depends on how good your bulk is, but Swampert has fantastic bulk with 100 HP, 90 defense, and 90 special defense. There are very, very few Pokemon that have better mixed bulk than that. The only ones that really come to mind are Suicune, who is broken, Jirachi, and Celebi, who each have 100s across the board. So Swampert not too far behind them. It's got pretty good mixed attacking stats as well. 110 is very respectable for Gen 3 standards, and 85 is pretty workable, especially if you're using Stab, and especially if you're using Hydro Pump, which is a very strong move. Now, as compared to the other two Water-type starters that are featured in Generation 3, we have Blastoise, who has a pretty respectable base stat spread itself. It does have 5 less total points than Swampert, which kind of goes to show that the Gen 3 starters are cheating a little bit. And then, of course, we have the Generation 2 starter, Feraligatr. Oh, whoops, sorry, I didn't mean to show you that. I don't know how that got there. But, yeah, all 3 of these Pokemon have pretty decent stat distributions. I'm going to highlight with a red box all the stats that are considered the top of these 3. Swampert is winning with HP, attack, and special attack, which makes it probably the best offensively, which is kind of surprising to me. I would have thought that would have been Gator. But instead, Gator is leading the pack with defense, well, tied with Blastoise anyway. Blastoise has pretty good defensive stats, of course, with 100 and 105 special defense. It's also the fastest of the 3. I guess Feraligatr's also tied for that, and I forgot to give it props there, so My mistake. Sorry to all the Gator fans that I've disappointed. But yeah, Gator actually doesn't have the. It's not the best at anything if we're not counting ties, which is kind of sad to see. I would have thought it would have had the highest attack stat, but that's kind of not the most impressive thing, though, for Gator. Because it's a pure water type, it does not have any sort of physical stab. Whereas Swampert, with its dual ground type, does. So that makes that 110 very impressive when you're combining it with stab earthquakes. I will mention for Blastoise and for Alligator that their speed stat, while it's not super duper high, it is a pretty nice speed to be at because you are just a bit faster than the standard Claydol with no speed investment at all. They hit 192, whereas the standard Claydol set is going to hit 188. So that's pretty good. You can kind of be spin blockers with that. Not entirely, because really you're only good against Claydol as far as the spinners go. You don't love to see a Starmie with either of those Pokemon. I guess Gator can maybe muscle through with like Crunch or something, but it doesn't have a very good special attack stat to really be messing around with that. And then I just want to highlight once again that you get stab ground moves, i.e. stab earthquake with Swampert. So its attack stat is not only the highest, but it's the most functional and usable. I should give some props to Blastoise, who has a really nice stat spread, but the only thing that's kind of holding it back is the lower HP. Now, because its defenses are higher, it's pretty much comparable in bulk to Swampert. They're probably going to be taking like within 5% from each side. Maybe Blastoise, in fact, takes it a little better, particularly on the special side, where it's got a little bit more of a lead. But if it had a little bit more HP, in particular, if it had the 100 HP that Swampert had, it could do a lot more. And, you know, its attack stat is kind of not doing much for Blastoise. There's not really a need for it, so it's a little bit wasted. Whereas, you know, like I'm saying with Swampert, it can make use of all of its stats quite well. The water ground type, which I've mentioned quite a bit on the previous slide, I'm going to dive into a little more here to explain why it's such a good type. Arguably, it's the best defensive type, and that has to do with what it's weak to and what it's resistant to. Its only weakness is grass, which is ×4 super effective, which is not great, but at the cost of that, you're getting immunity to electric and resistance to poison, rock, steel, and fire. Rock and fire are extremely common coverage moves, and some of the best and strongest Pokemon in the game, like Tyranitar and Aerodactyl, are really dangerous because of Rock Slide, which has a chance to flinch. So a Pokemon that can resist Rock Slide is going to be one of the best counters to these Pokemon, because you'll be able to survive a flinch into another attack, essentially. Whereas other Pokemon, if they get flinched, they're probably in trouble. Fire, of course, is going to be one of the most common special coverage types. Fire Blast is extremely common on mixed Pokemon and on special attackers, as well as like Fire Punch and Flamethrower you'll see as well. So being able to switch into those coverage moves is pretty nice. Any water type likes that. And then Steel is good for the Metagross matchup in particular. It makes Swampert, who is the most bulky of the 3 water ground types that we see at the top, also going to be the most used. No disrespect to Quagsire, a little bit of disrespect to Whiscash because it doesn't even have Dragon Dance or Spikes this generation. It does get quite a bit better in later generations, although that it doesn't really help because the power creep is so immense that Whiscash has already well fallen off. But I do like it for draft. Enough of that, though. Meteor Mash being walled by Swampert is quite a good thing for it, and then being able to hit back with Earthquakes, which will usually 2-bit KO Metagross, or even Hydro Pumps if you're more specially inclined, which will be also threatening 2-bit KOs in most cases. Poison resistance is probably one of the least valuable resistances you can have. There are not very many Pokemon that use Poison-type attacks. Sludge Bomb is really the only move you would see, and the only Pokemon that really use it are like Weezing, Venusaur, and then like on rare occasion you might see Metagross use it, but I would not put too much stock in the poison resistance. But it's also this dual type combination, a really good offensive type. Water is hitting ground, fire, and rock. Ground is hitting all of fire, rock, electric, poison, and steel for super effective damage. That's a lot. And ground got it too good, I think. The levitate ability and flying type being designed to counter specifically ground is because they gave it way too many types that it hits super effective. But I digress. It's a really good spread of types that you will hit. And a lot of these types are very relevant in the tier. Not so much poison, I'm not going to lie. The only super duper relevant poison type is Gengar, who's immune to ground type moves anyway. But steel, rock, fire, to lesser extents. Ground, very common type. Electric, somewhat common. Zapdos kind of nullifies the ground weakness, but Pokemon like Jolteon and Raikou having to worry about switching in is a big deal, because sometimes those are the Pokemon that are designed to hit your water ground type with a coverage hidden power grass. But I mentioned grass before, I mentioned it right there. Grass is the killer. We have an awesome type combination in water ground, and there's the evil, intimidating Onion, who is trying to ruin it for us. So, bad Celebi, that's what I have to say. Although, to be honest, if you're going to pick one type to be super duper weak to, Grass is a pretty good candidate, because the strongest Grass type move in the game, functionally, is Hidden Power Grass. Yes, I know that Leaf Blade is tied in base power. Yes, I know that Frenzy Plant exists. But, I mean, functionally, you're not going to see those moves. So, basically, Hidden Power Grass is the strongest thing you're going to see. Which is kind of good when you have such good defensive stats as Swampert, because you can actually tank a lot of Hidden Power Grasses and go on with your day. But the common defensive sets for Swampert are going to be, well, obviously very high HP and defense investment. There's a little bit of SPDEF investment, which I'm going to highlight here. That is so that in conjunction with your HP investment, you will live a modest HP Grass from Zapdos or Moltres if you're at full HP. So that's kind of nice. And that's modest as well, where Zapdos and Moltres like to run Timid a lot, so you'll even be able to live sometimes after some spikes damage. I wouldn't bank on it too much, but it's possible. The moves that we're going to see here are going to be Earthquake and Ice Beam, which is great coverage. Ground and Ice hit a lot of the tier for super effective damage. And there are very, very few Pokemon that are resistant to both of these types. I think... Can I even think of one? Because most of the Levitators are weak to Ice, i.e. Flygon and Claydol. And then all the flying types, of course, are going to get hit for at least neutral damage by Ice. So you'd have to be a Grass type or a Bug type, and I don't think... Are there any Bug types that resist Ice? I mean, okay, yeah, I think there's Surskit, but that's Surskit, so that doesn't count really as a Pokemon. No offense to the Surskit fans in the comment section, but yeah, no, I wouldn't worry about that. To round out, you're going to have Protect, which is really good for chip healing, particularly in Sandstorm, where your opponent is not going to be making progress with their leftovers if they are not a sand immune Pokemon. But because Swampert is a sand immune Pokemon, it will be, and you can Protect and just live for a long time, despite the fact that you don't have any direct recovery. And then lastly, you have a pick between Hydro Pump, Roar, and Refresh. You could run Surf here as well. The reason why Hydro Pump is preferred is to hit Skarmory. With Surf, you're not even going to be 3-hit KOing Skarmory, whereas with Hydro Pump, you will be threatening to 3-hit KO the Skarm, which means that Skarmory is at best going to be able to get 3 layers, meaning that you can spin them away later and you only have to deal with that 3 layers once. Whereas if you're not even threatening a 3-hit KO on Skarmory, it can get all those layers up and then go for a Toxic, and then it could maybe Roar and be super duper annoying. But being able to hit the Skarmory for a lot of damage, at least 3-hit KO range, is an important thing. And Swampert is able to do that with Stab, Hydro Pump. Alternatively, you could go for a little bit more of a defensive idea. Just ironically, it has less actual defense investment, but Surf Defensive Swampert does give you a little bit more utility because you're going to drop your coverage moves for more longevity in the form of Refresh and possibly Roar. Although Toxic is very, very good for the Surf Defensive Swampert, who is relying on Surf as its only attacking move. This is a really good set at countering the rock types, particularly Tyranitar and Aerodactyl. And it's good at making progress against other toxic weak Pokemon, particularly opposing Swamperts who are not running Refresh. But that's not really what we're focusing on in this video. I'm sure if you've played ADV, you have a really good concept of what Swampert's defensive properties are. And if you would like to hear a little more, you should check out my Rock Resist in ADV video, where we dedicate quite a bit of time to Swampert, as it definitely deserves, because it is one of the best Rock Resists. And I keep mentioning Tyranitar and Aerodactyl being such scary Pokemon. You definitely want to have a good Rock Resist. But moving on, we have a more offensive variation of Swampert that's running 4 attacks, usually Hydro Pump, Earthquake, Ice Beam, and Focus Punch. You could run Hidden Power Grass to hit opposing Swampert for a lot more damage, but I don't know if that's super duper relevant. I mean, 2 Hydro Pumps is usually going to be putting opposing Swampert into a dire situation. I think the really defensive variants of Swampert might take 3 Hydro Pumps, but and then it might depend on if you're in Torrent range or not. But all right, enough digressing. I definitely like the game plan of this Swampert, particularly on teams that are struggling a little bit with Blissey. This is designed to be a little bit faster than Blissey. I believe with 44 speed and a quiet nature, Swampert is going to hit 150 speed, which is just a bit faster than a 4-speed EV Blissey. The idea here is that you're going to be going for Earthquake to force Blissey into soft-boiled range. When Blissey has to click soft-boiled, you're going to go for a Focus Punch, which will cover the Blissey going for soft-boiled or switching out. If the Blissey stays in, it's going to get nailed by the Focus Punch, which will either straight up kill it or put it in range to be finished off by Earthquake, which is why you do want to be faster than a Blissey, Now, of course, Blissey could run speed itself, and it commonly does when it is running Seismic Toss as its only attacking move, in no small part because of this standard offensive Swampert spread. I should also mention that if you are looking at older pastes, you might see a faster variation of Swampert, usually one that's running a minus special defense nature rather than a minus speed nature. That is because at the time, it was considered really important for Swampert to be able to outspeed Claydol to act as a sort of auxiliary spin block. That is not nearly as useful in today's metagame. Now, I'm not going to say that no speed investment on Swampert matters. Of course, being faster than things like Tyranitar, opposing Swampert, and Skarmory is a big deal. And then, of course, being faster than Blissey. But the amount of HP investment that you're foregoing in order to get that kind of speed on Swampert is usually not worth it. You're going to need to run another sturdy rock resist in conjunction with a low HP investment Swampert if you are going to keep some modicum of balance. Or you could just forego all of that entirely and just go maximally offensive, which is what EndPert is designed to do. So the move that makes EndPert is Endeavor. Endeavor is a move that sets the target's current HP to be equal to the user's current HP when it hits. It will fail if the user has more current HP, I think also equal current HP, to the target. So I'm sure many of you are familiar with a strategy called Fear, which stands for, I'm not going to say what it actually stands for, but what most people say it stands for is Focus Sash, Endeavor, Quick Attack, Rattata. And here is one of the earliest examples of this being used in DPP Wi-Fi battle. This Rattata here, level 1, has only 12 maximum HP, is going to get hit down to 1 HP, bust its Focus Sash, but on the turn that it gets hit, it's going to go for Endeavor to set the opponent's HP down to 1, and then it uses Quick Attack, which is a priority move, which will be faster than most moves that your opponent can click, and force that KO. But while this makes a lot of great use of the mechanics of Endeavor, having a Pokemon that has a really low base HP and a really high speed, which, I mean, level 1 Rattata, of course, is not very fast, but you have priority, which kind of negates any sort of speed disadvantage. It's making great use of Endeavor. But in practice, fear strategies like this, that are taking advantage of these really low HP Pokemon, these level 1 guys, are really difficult to pull off in ADV. Part of the reason for that is that there is no Focus Sash in Gen 3. So you can't just manage to do this with an item. You're going to have to get more creative. And by that, I mean using the move Endure, which is a little bit less... or it's a little bit more exploitable, I should say. If your opponent decides not to attack you, then your Endure is going to be useless, and you're not likely to get multiple Endures in a row. I think it has a fail chance, kind of like Protect. So you go for Endure, and your opponent goes for Dragon Dance. Well, now you're in a pickle, because you're likely to fail your next Endure opportunity, and they're going to kill you. So keep that in mind. There's limited priority options in ADV. Not very many Pokemon get access to good priority moves like Mach Punch or Extreme Speed. A good number of Pokemon do get access to Quick Attack, like Rattata in this example. It does have access to Endeavor and Quick Attack in Generation 3. There are some other Pokemon like Talo who also get this. Um, but there's not, I don't know, there's not a super duper big advantage to using one or the other in Gen 3. In later generations, Talo is actually a little bit better because it has the ability Scrappy, so it won't thud into ghost types. But it does not have that ability in Generation 3, so it kind of doesn't matter. And then permanent sand is a massive problem for a lot of Pokemon that are trying to do something like this. So you're kind of looking for a sand immune Pokemon that can make this strategy work, which is not very easy to come by. I don't think that there are. I'm actually not sure. Maybe I'll look it up right now. We're doing some investigative journalism live on Tetrafolium's YouTube channel. But how many Pokemon have the combination of Endeavor and Quick Attack in Generation 3 that are sand immune? Dodrio does not count. Sceptile, Swellow, Hitmontop, Raticate. Their baby forms. Yeah, so no, there's literally 0 Pokemon that have the combination of Endeavor, Quick Attack, and a sand immunity. I'm not going to check all the other priority moves. That could be your homework if you want to try to make something like this work in ADV, but I'm going to tell you that it's probably not happening. But instead of doing something that's a little bit inconsistent like this, we could do something that's a little bit more consistent by using Swampert, who is a fantastic Pokemon at 100 HP, and take advantage of the synergies between Endeavor, keeping you or wanting you to be at low HP, and its ability Torrent, which also wants you to be at low HP. For those who don't know, a Pokemon with the ability Torrent, i.e. all the water starters, when they're below a third of their maximum HP, will get a 1.5 times boost to their water moves. There's similar abilities, of course, for the grass-type starters in Overgrow and the fire-type starters in Blaze. But yeah, Torrent, very good on Swampert. Makes it a very powerful Pokemon, especially with that really high base power Hydro Pump. This makes for an alternative take on offensive Swampert, which can get you a lot of value in certain situations. And then Permanent Sand is just really good for a sand immune Pokemon using Endeavor, which I think Swampert is one of the only ones that is even possible to do this with. The reason being is that if you're at 1 HP and you get an Endeavor off and the opponent is not immune to sand, then they're going to take sand damage and die to that. And then they're going to have to switch in. And Swampert, if it outspeeds, is going to be able to get another Endeavor off on something, which, if that's also not a sand immune Pokemon, you get 2 kills for the price of 1 Pokemon, which is a fantastic place to be when you're on an offense team. So this is Smogon's EndPert set. You have Substitute, Endeavor, Hydro Pump, or Surf, and on their page they say Roar or Ice Beam, but I'm throwing Toxic into this mix for the 4th move. There are a lot of possible 4th moves that you could run. We'll talk about maybe some of the more niche ones in a moment, but I do think that Roar, Ice Beam, and Toxic are the most consistent, and I would even argue that Ice Beam is the least valuable of these moves, but there are definitely reasons to use Ice Beam, in particular if you're very weak to Salamence on your team. The speed stat here, this is just max speed Swampert with max special attack. It's the most simple spread you could probably go with. But I want to note that with a Salac Berry, Swampert will hit 360 speed, which puts it 1 point slower than a max speed Starmie or Raikou, which is not great. You would love to have been faster than that, but that does mean you're faster than things like a max speed Gengar, all the base 100s like Salamence and Flygon and Jirachi, etc. So this is a pretty solid speed tier. It would be even more solid if it was just a little bit faster, but we're going to have to take what we can get. So Hydro Pump, I would say, is the preferred water move of choice on faster paced teams, especially if you're running spikeless. Surf does have some use cases, and it's really nice to not have to worry about missing your Hydro Pump, because there will be situations where EndPert is in prime position to secure a KO, and then it misses its pump, and then you don't get the KO. So that's not nice, but Surf will alleviate that a little bit. I would recommend that more on teams that have spikes, because you want to have that extra bit of damage to support your Surf, which is going to do less damage than Hydro Pump. Notably, Hydro Pump with max special attack investment is capable of two-shotting Skarmory, who is a Pokemon that is kind of a check to EndPert because of Spikes and Roar, and as well as Toxic. And then Hydro Pump just does massive damage into a lot of other Pokemon as well, which could threaten a KO where Surf might not. A good example would be into Tyranitar. The bulkless Tyranitars can sometimes survive Surf, whereas the bulkless ones will usually not survive Hydro Pump. Roar and Toxic are countermeasures to Pokemon that are trying to recover spam in the face of EndPert. We'll give you an example of what that kind of looks like after we get into the next slide. But yeah, one of the ways that your opponents try to stop you from getting a lot of value out of your EndPert is going into a Pokemon with Recover and clicking Recover as you're behind a substitute, and you can't take any more damage really by subbing up or like taking hits from your opponent. So you're going to be capped at like 75% HP and not able to get any lower, so that you can endeavor the opponent into Hydro Pump range. Can be really annoying, but Roar and Toxic are there to help you to stop that sort of recover spamming from happening. In particular, Toxic is really nice into the Pokemon who are resistant to your water moves as well. So, for example, like Starmie and Celebi. It will force them to switch. Now, granted, they do have natural cure, so they're going to be able to heal that poison off. But all you really need to do is get them to switch and then nail whatever switches in with your water move or a low HP Endeavor. And you're making a lot of progress anyway. Now, some forbidden tech that we can talk about for that fourth move. Double Edge. The idea behind Double Edge is that you'll take recoil damage. So, if you're up against a Pokemon that is gonna abuse your EndPert for, say, like a setup opportunity, let's say, for example, you're up against a max speed Tyranitar and you've run out of Hydro Pumps, or you have like Surf and you're not killing their Tyranitar, even with Torrent Boost, then to stop them from being able to get a DD and then reverse sweep you, you could go for Double Edge, which will do enough recoil to your 1 HP Swampert for you to die, to stop that Tyranitar from getting a boost. Now, this is not a fantastic example, because obviously if you just have Hydro Pump instead of Surf, you're very likely to kill as long as you hit. But there could be some other edge cases where this might matter. Another example maybe could be if you are not endeavoring, say, like a Gyarados or a Salamence into range of sand, or your opponent was able to clear sand, so they're not going to die to Endeavor plus sand, obviously, because there's no sand. You could stop them from being able to get their DD off with those Pokemon. Whirlpool is a very inconsistent option because it freaking misses all the time, but it can be nice because it partially traps the opponent, meaning that for a few turns they're not going to be able to switch, which means that you can sub all the way down, get your Endeavor off, and Whirlpool, because it does a little bit of chip damage at the end of every turn, if you get down to 1 HP and Endeavor the opponent, Whirlpool will finish them off at the end of the turn. Rain Dance and Hail are possibilities if you want to clear sand. Now, I don't know if you want to clear sand with EndPert. Usually sand is really good in conjunction with EndPert, but if you want to enable, say, your Hydro Pump to one-shot things that it otherwise wouldn't, like, say, a Metagross, or, like, do extra damage to something like a Jirachi, all these neutral hits, right? Or if you have, say, a Swift Swimmer in the back like Kingdra that you're trying to set up for, then this could be an option as well. Hail is a very, how should I say? It's like a very niche option. It can be nice if you want to KO your EndPert to get a entry for something else on your team. Say, for example, your opponent is spamming Recover, and you need them to stay at about 50%. You get the Endeavor off on them. They're going for Recover. Well, actually, that's not going to work because they just recover again as you hail. But I don't know. If they happen to be in a situation where that doesn't occur, I don't know. Hail is a very, very weird one. But it can be nice into the sand immune Pokemon that are trying to hold up in front of Swampert. Now, the problem is all the sand immune Pokemon are usually getting smashed by Hydro Pump, but I don't know, I guess Quagsire could maybe be a problem for EndPert because you put it to 1 HP and then you can't kill it because you only have water moves. But I think if that's the worry for you, I would probably just run Ice Beam as that fourth move rather than Hail. But all right, I mean, you could do that. You could use Hail. I've been told that that's possible. Icy Wind to lower the opponent's speed. This is more so in the case that you're getting a kill with the Endeavor and then the opponent that comes in doesn't care about going down to 1 HP. They just want to like set up to win. Say, for example, like a Agility Metagross could be a nasty thing to have to deal with. You go for Icy Wind, and then, well, actually, that doesn't work because Metagross has Clear Body, so get smoked, idiot. Also, Agility would outpace the Icy Wind debuff, so I don't know where you would use this one either. The Pokemon that would come to my mind most readily would be against Tyranitar, but once again, just click Hydro Pump. Attract, very inconsistent because you are betting on your opponent having a Pokemon of the opposite gender. Although there are some Pokemon that are gender locked, like for example, Blissey can only be female. So if you set your Swampert to be male, you could use Attract on Blissey, and any Blissey that is trying to soft boil loop your EndPert is going to have some trouble doing so. Forces them to switch out, in which case you could maybe get a very strong Hydro Pump or Endeavor off on something else. And then Dynamic Punch is also very inconsistent, 50% accurate, but you can fuse if you hit, so that's not completely terrible, I guess. Of these, I think Whirlpool is probably the most interesting. Double Edge could have some interesting use cases as well. And then Rain Dance, maybe. And then the rest of them, I would say I probably don't do that. But please stick with Roar, Toxic, and then maybe Ice Beam. In my professional opinion. Not that I have like any sort of credentials really to go off of. But, you know, not very many ADV YouTubers have 1,000 subscribers. But even less have 2,000 subscribers. So if you're at this point in the video, you've been watching for about 45 minutes and you're not subscribed, what are you doing? You should subscribe. You're gonna listen to me yap for 45 minutes and you're not gonna do this again. I feel like that's pretty low chances of happening, even less than hitting a dynamic punch. So please dynamic punch the subscribe button. All right, I'm not going to say anything like that again. That was very cringe. A Pokemon Mystery Dungeon status. Endeavor is a trapping move. So while Endeavor does not exactly force the opponent Pokemon to stay in, it does heavily disincentivize switching out. The reason being is that Endeavor is going to do a lot of damage if you are at low HP. So if you're down to like 25-ish% or even 1 HP, and your opponent switches as you click Endeavor, well, they're just going to take a lot of damage, and then with the Salic boost, you're going to be faster than a large majority of Pokemon. Not every single Pokemon, of course. Things like Jolteon, Aerodactyl, Raikou, and Starmie can outspeed you, even after the +1, but, like, those Pokemon don't exactly want to take an Endeavor or a Hydro Pump on Switch. So what ends up happening in many cases versus an Endeavor Swampert is that the opponent will just have to stay in and sacrifice one of their Pokemon to stop your Endeavor Pert from getting more than 1 KO. So, like, the example here, of course, is if you have a 1% HP Swampert, or literally 1 HP, behind a substitute, Blissey is in. Well, Blissey can't really effectively stay in, because it's going to get Endeavored down to 1 HP, which is going to cause it to get killed by a Surf or a Hydro Pump thereafter. And then it can't really switch out either, because whatever it switches out into is going to take Endeavor and get smoked. Now, Blissey maybe is, again, not the best example, because it can just click Soft Boiled forever, but you can stall the Blissey out of Soft Boiled by clicking Substitute as it goes for Soft Boiled, and then they're forced to have to break your Substitute to stop you from stalling them, in which case, if you manage to get the Endeavor off, then their Blissey is going to die. So, yeah, that's a really nasty loop that Blissey does not want to be in, and I'm going to show you an example of what happens if you are unwilling to stay in and sacrifice one Pokemon for the sake of stopping EndPert from making progress right about now. Alright, here we find ourselves partway into a battle where I'm playing with an Endeavor Swampert team with Registeel, Raikou, DD Tyranitar, Celebi. This is a fairly standard variant of this team, which we'll be talking about later. But let's start with turn 25 here. This Raikou is going to force, well, I guess we're on turn 24, but turn 25 is what's important. We're going to force this Gengar to switch out, as Swampert comes in at 51% due to all these spikes against Blissey. My opponent is going to switch the Blissey out as I go for Substitute. Now, this is the dangerous spot for an Endeavor Swampert to be. The next Substitute that I get will put me at about 1 HP. Or I guess exactly 1 HP. It kind of depends on how many HP EVs you give your Swampert, but I would recommend that you don't give any. But that means that my opponent is kind of pressured to not break this Substitute. And since they have a defensive Starmie here, they're going to try to do that by spamming Recover. I'll go for Endeavor, putting them at 27%. They're threatening to die to Surf, but they're just going to Recover spam. So I'm going to throw a Toxic on the Starmie, force it to switch out. We get into Gengar. I go for Substitute to scout the switch. Substitute is my least useful move at this point, so I can waste PP on that. And because I'm at 26, I'm in Torrent range, so my Surf is doing a lot of damage, so opposing Swampert, Tyranitar, Skarmory don't really want to switch into Surf. Neither does Gengar. But these two Natural Cure Pokemon are going to be the two that are trying to stop my Swampert from getting any value here. But eventually, I'm going to either find a Endeavor on the Blissey as it switches in, or kill all the remaining other Pokemon with Surf as they switch in. So I'm making kind of safe plays right now. I want to Surf every time that this Skarmory is in because I don't want to get roared. And I want to Toxic every time this Starmie is staying in and clicking Recover. Similarly with Blissey, if I don't catch that with an Endeavor on the switch in. I have to be careful not to use Endeavor too flippantly because it only has 8 PP and I could run out. So that's why I'm, once again, just playing very safe with these substitutes. Another possible angle for me is if this Starmie switches in at low enough HP and I critically hit it with Surf, we might be able to get the kill. But eventually, this Blissey is going to come in. I click Surf. Did not click the Endeavor there, but we'll get there eventually. Force that switch. This is going to switch out into Skarmory, who gets caught by an Endeavor. Not that consequential for the Skarmory, but it does keep it into Surf range. I predict the Starmie switch and go for Toxic there. And then just Surf the Blissey. Toxic it to force that to switch. Toxic that Starmie again. Blissey's coming back in, and I catch it with an Endeavor. Now it's at 14%. Torrent Boosted Surf will kill it, so my opponent has to switch out. They go to Starmie, who is the only thing that can really take a Surf. I get a Toxic on the Starmie. Now it's forced to switch out. They go for Thunder Wave just to waste some PP. I go for Substitute in case they try to break my Substitute, and then I'm going to be at 1 HP behind the Substitute, threatening to Endeavor anything down to 1 HP, which would be devastating for a lot of the Pokemon on this team. My opponent's going to switch to Skarmory, who's dying to Surf. Go back to Starmie, who is dead to a Surf at this stage. But I kind of assumed that they would go for Recover. They did not. They switched to Gengar, but that's fine because I can go for a Surf. Because the Gengar is paralyzed, I'd be able to get a fast Substitute off. Worst case scenario, they break my Substitute, and then I'm 1 HP Swampert with the Salic boost, faster than the entire world here. And I'm going to be able to kill the Gengar and get another Endeavor on something, or at least force the Gengar to switch and get an Endeavor on something. But fortunately, I get a full para there, which allows me to kill that Gengar off. Now Starmie's really the only thing that can afford to switch into the Swampert. I get a Toxic off on it as it goes for a Recover. And now they're kind of just screwed because Surf is going to do a lot to any switch in. This is why I say that Swampert is kind of a trapper, because the only way to have stopped all these Pokemon from dying is if this Starmie would just stay in and accept that it's going to like sacrifice itself to my Swampert. Break the Substitute as I go for a Substitute there. Now I'm in the exact position I want to be with EndPert. 1 HP behind a Substitute. Endeavor is going to kill the world here. Now Starmie's dead to Sand. Blissey is going to die to Torrent Boosted Surf. Swampert's going to die to Torrent Boosted Surf. After a Protect. And then Tyranitar might live a Torrent Boosted Surf, depending on what set it is. It seems like it does have just enough gas to get there, but Raikou going to outspeed and finish off the Tyranitar. And there you go. So yeah, the point that I was kind of getting to is that basically my opponent needed to take one of their Pokemon, probably this Starmie, and ensure that the Swampert's only getting 1 kill by breaking its Substitute. And then when I get down to my Endeavor range, go for the hit on the Swampert. Ideally, it will Endeavor you. You'll be at 1 HP. You kill the Swampert, and then you lose your Starmie, which is a 1-for-1 trade. If you let the Endeavor Swampert go up more than that, then you're getting a lot of value out of it. You can't let that happen. So that's why I'm saying functionally it's a trapper, because switching around like that is what enabled this Swampert to basically 6-0 the team. Alright, I'm not going to go specifically into the details of the Swampert set. It's going to be the standard Endeavor Swampert with the options Hydro Pump and Toxic for this particular team. But this team, I'm calling it Pangments Celebi Slop. Following in the footsteps of the father of Slop, Fredazi, we're going to use EndPert to enable Salamence to win the game. And then we're going to have a mixed offense team structure around it. The lead Adamant DD Tar is aiming to bait the opposing rock resist, usually Swampert, to trade down with it. There is a great guide on this written by Fredazi that's on Smogon that I will be linking in the description if you want to read more about it. But in essence, the idea with this team is that we want to eliminate all of the Salamence defensive checks and then get a DD with Salamence and win the game. So, Tyranitar is able to enable that by luring in the Swampert as it goes for turn 1 DD, and then you Earthquake into Double Edge to leave the opposing Swampert at about 30-ish%, maybe even less, and possibly even getting a kill if it's a very low defense investment Swampert. Or if you get a critical hit, which is also lucky and great when it happens. You might be tempted to not do that because you have a Celebi and a Raikou with this team, but I assure you that the game is going to be a lot easier on you if you are willing to make that trade Tyranitar into Swampert. Now, it gets a little awkward if your opponent leads Swampert because you don't have that +1 boost for free. In that case, I would probably switch the Tyranitar out and try to set up the situation where Tyranitar is trading with Swampert later in the game. But Swampert lead is not super duper common. It's a little more common nowadays because of this strategy and because a lot of people like to lead their Endeavor Swampert, which we may get to see in one of the replays here. But yeah, Celebi and Raikou are to limit the other bulky waters, particularly Celebi and Milotic, in the mid and end game. They can also sometimes function as alternate win cons. Like Tyranitar technically could be a win con as well. Any of these boosters could just sweep through an entire team, but they're not quite as well suited to do so. Tyranitar, mostly because it's in the lead slot, so it's oftentimes getting threatened by something and going to be taking too much damage to endgame. Raikou does not have substitute on this team. We're dropping sub for Crunch to have a better move to hit Claydol and Celebi. And Celebi not Leech. It is Calm Mind with 3 attacks, so it is just all in on offense there. Not a lot of longevity, and not any speed boosting for Raikou or Celebi. This is why Salamence is usually the win condition for the team. But again, you play the matchup how it is. If Celebi can 6-0, then just win the game with Celebi. Registeel is the primary Zapdos check for the team. Celebi can function as that as well, but it doesn't like to take a bunch of HP Ices, and because you don't have Recover or Leech Seed, you're not going to very consistently be able to get your Celebi back up to health if it's taking hits from Zapdos. And Registeel is going to just more generally be the special wall. It's not so good into Charizard or Moltres, so be careful when playing against teams like that, but against other special attackers, Registeel is quite good. You have Explosion to threaten to stop a Calm Mind sweep from opposing Suicune, for example. Jirachi can be a little bit of an issue, but that's why we have Penguin Mence. Penguin Mence is a DD Mence set that is dropping Hidden Power Flying in favor of Brick Break so that you have better coverage to beat some late game sweepers or cleaners. In particular, a high attack investment Salamence with Brick Break is threatening Blissey quite well. Now, you don't one-shot Blissey, but you will always two-shot it, and that means that Blissey can't really come in to stop your sweep. A lot of DD Mence teams can have issues with Blissey in the late game if it comes in at very high HP. You are not going to be able to 2-hit KO it without a boost, and you're too slow if you're DDing as the Blissey switches in. With Brick Break as an option, you have the ability to Brick Break the Blissey as it comes in and do more than 50%, force it to switch out, and then you can get your DD later. Or, I mean, you can just finish it off with the Brick Break there. Or if the Blissey has taken a little bit of chip damage, which is certainly possible, you could sack your Raikou into it and then force it out with, say, Tyranitar. If it's in range for +1 Brick Break, you can DD as it comes in at about 80-ish% and then kill it with Brick Break. The reason why we still want Rock Slide and Earthquake is so that we're not losing so hard to things like Zapdos, Aerodactyl, which we're not able to one-shot with Brick Break consistently. Jirachi, who is a big pain in the ass for Brick Break DD Salamence if you don't have Earthquake. You could maybe get high enough with in boosts for Brick Break to get there, but I think you need +3 to kill most Jirachi, and even the defensive Jirachis can still live, so not super duper consistent, but it's kind of a funny looking Salamence set, but it is a pretty effective one, I will say. You'll note if you're looking at the paste in the description that this Salamence has 212 Spadef and not max attack. The idea behind that is that we will live a Gengar Ice Punch, which can be the difference maker between getting the sweep and not. I think it's a little bit more helpful in the case that you have Hidden Power Flying on your Salamence, because +1 Hidden Power Flying is going to kill pretty much all Gengar. But I think it's still important to have that, because we could get chip on the Gengar via our Tyranitar or our Raikou, or even potentially our Celebi later in the game. We could also get a Thunder Wave off with Registeel, because Gengar likes to switch into Registeel, because Registeel usually doesn't have a move that can hit Gengar other than Thunder Wave. If we manage that, then we at least have Paraflinch out, and we have a little bit more consistency than that even, because we'll live an Ice Punch if we don't manage to get the Paraflinch. So that's the team. I've spent, I think, long enough talking about that, and I definitely encourage you once again to check out the slop guide that Ferdazi posted on Smogon, that I will be posting a link to in the description, so that you can get a little bit more of a grasp of what this team structure is like. These are not the only 6 Pokemon you could put on this team, but almost every team is going to have Tyranitar, Registeel, and Endeavor Swampert, and then probably also DD Mence. So the Raikou and the Celebi can be switched out. I've seen things like Dragonite, Gengar, Pupitar in those slots, so I don't know if they'll be talking about Pupitar in the post, but I have seen that before. Maybe we'll do a Pupitar video if you guys are so inclined to see that. But that's going to do it for this section of the video. We are going to get into our replays of me playing with the team. I always try to put my money where my mouth is. I'm not like these YouTubers who talk about these Pokemon and then never play with them. Oops, let's make it so that the text is a little bit more visible for those who want to be reminded of what the set is. And get some new music. I guess we have a little bit of a Xenoblade Chronicles feel today. These are from the definitive edition. The first song was Satorl Marsh. Obviously, there are Swampert in the Satorl Marsh. Not actually, but those big ass toads always remind me of Swampert. And then this is You Will Know Our Names, which is one of the best boss themes in Xenoblade and possibly in JRPGs as a whole. I know that's a tall statement because JRPGs have fantastic music, but trust me when I say that Xenoblade is definitely a contender in that category. First match, we're up against EVA008. I think that might be an Evangelion reference. I don't know. I haven't seen it yet. I know, it's crazy. Take away my weeb card. But, yeah, let's just get into it. All right, lead Suicune. Lead Suicune is very commonly offensive, and Swampert, due to its natural bulk, you don't even need any investment, will be able to live a Calm Mind boosted Hydro Pump. So I'm going to make an extremely risky play that I don't necessarily recommend that you guys do yourself, and go straight to Swampert turn 1 against the Suicune. Now, I'm going to hope that the Suicune does not have Hidden Power Grass, so that it's forced to click Hydro Pump, and if it clicks Hydro Pump into my Swampert, which it does, it'll leave me at really low HP, and I go for Endeavor immediately. So one of the things that people who are first starting out with Endeavor Swampert do that is a big mistake is always clicking sub turn 1. There are a lot of situations, in fact, where substitute is not the click you want to go for. In fact, I would say most situations you don't want to be clicking sub as the first thing that you do with Swampert. Because I go for that Endeavor, I leave the Suicune at very low HP, 11% itself, and then my Salic Berry activates, and I just have to land my Hydro Pump to get the kill on Suicune. Then they're going to go to Dugtrio, which is one of the few Pokemon that does outspeed +1 Swampert, and get the kill. But this team is designed to punish Dugtrio revenge kills by going to Salamence. Now that I'm in with Salamence and this Dugtrio is locked into Earthquake, they have to switch because they cannot let my Salamence go for a Dragon Dance and then just sweep their team. So I'm going to kind of expect that and go for a double switch to my Tyranitar. Now, this didn't really work out as well as me just going for a Dragon Dance, because if I Dragon Dance and then Brick Break this Tyranitar, then they probably are going to snowball out of control and lose the game. But I wanted to check to see if they had another Salamence check on their team. Potentially they're running like a double water team with Swampert, although I don't know if Dugtrio fits on that kind of structure that well. But just to check it, I will go to my Tyranitar and I'm going to Dragon Dance. So against a lead Tyranitar with this team, you are almost always going to want to Dragon Dance. The only Tyranitars that can beat you are ones that go for Focus Punch first turn, which is not a sane person's click, but that is the click that I would make on most of the lead Focus Punch Tyranitar teams that I have against another Tyranitar. I'm not a sane person, though. The other thing that they could do is have a Choice Band and then Earthquake could kill you, but if they kill you with Earthquake and it's not a critical hit, you know it's Choice Band, which means that you can do the same thing and punish it with a Salamence switch. They are going to go to Heracross here, who will die to a Double Edge. It was a roll to kill with Rock Slide, and also I could miss, so might as well just go for the Double Edge. Regardless, they are going to pick up the kill with their Dugtrio, and then I'm going to do the same thing and go into my Ments. Now, they've revealed that their switch into Salamence is Tyranitar, which, like, that's perfect for me. I'm going to now take this opportunity to Dragon Dance, and Brick Break is super duper killing. It does not matter what this Tyranitar set is, it's dead. So, good night. The critical hit for good measure. And then they go to Jirachi, who is sometimes a reasonable switch because Brick Break Salamence oftentimes is dropping Earthquake, but because I'm an insane human being, I have Earthquake as well, and they just lose the game. Presumably, their last is something that is going to die straight up to Salamence, and then Dugtrio obviously is not doing anything to Salamence. So we win that game in 11 turns, only revealed 3 Pokemon, and this is what this team can do if you get the right matchup there. So yeah, very solidly played by me. I'm going to glaze myself, of course. This is the Tetrafolium YouTube channel where Tetrafolium gets to call himself the GOAT. We're up against Hub, who's a 1621 gamer. Very respectable. What am I at? 1567. So not very respectable. But yeah. All right, so lead Metagross. This is an awkward lead matchup. I would say most of the time with Tyranitar, you just want to take the Earthquake and get the damage on Metagross. But I'll be honest, I had played against this particular gamer prior to this, and I sort of, understanding the goal of their team, thought that it would be better to save my Tyranitar. So I'm actually going to switch to Registeel here to take a Meteor Mash for not too much damage. And now I'm threatening to get a Thunder Wave off on something. They go to Magneton, which is the only thing on their team that really can afford to take it. Unfortunately, I will be trapped because of Magnet Pull. And they're going to Thunder Wave me and get a critical hit with Thunderbolt. So very lucky on their part. I'm not mad about it or anything. No, I'm not really, because this Registeel was going to be not long for the world anyway. I am going to go for a Thunder Wave. Hopefully I hit through my Paralysis, which is great, but they have Lumberry on their Tyranitar. That's still okay, because I have a sequence here where I will go to Mence, Cycle, and Intimidate, as they're kind of forced to go for Earthquake into my Registeel to stop from getting Thunder Waved again. And then I'll go back to Registeel, who is threatening to Thunder Wave them again, so they have to Earthquake. Now, I could have went to Mence there again and gotten them to -1, in which case I could stay in with Mence and do something nasty to them. But if they went for another Dragon Dance, then things could have gotten really hairy. So I will just opt to sack the Registeel and be satisfied with this Tyranitar being at neutral. Now I can get into Swampert, who will be threatening a Hydro Pump as they reveal Celebi. I'm going to go to Raikou, who is going to be threatening a big crunch on the Celebi, or to set up with a Calm Mind. I kind of over-predict a little bit and go for Thunderbolt, trying to catch this Metagross, which I could 2-hit KO with Thunderbolt at neutral, or this Tyranitar, which I could do a pretty hefty amount of damage to. But it doesn't really work out for me. Celebi is going to land the second Leech Seed. And then I'm just going to crunch into it. I get a Spadef drop, which is very lucky because they go for Swords Dance and they would be threatening to pass that boost. But because I got the Spadef drop, I'm going to kill them if they stay in. I will just take damage onto the Tyranitar that switches in. Leech Seed is going to negate almost all of that. But now I can go to Swampert, who's taking 22% from Rock Slide. And I'm going to go for Toxic, which would have covered a switch to Celebi. In small part, because I could substitute down, force this Celebi to go for Giga Drain if it has it, or HP Grass if it has that. And then be kind of a nuisance to it, stop it from being able to pass that Swords Dance quite well. It also covers this Tyranitar staying in to some degree, because I can get some damage on it there. I will go for a substitute now. The reason being is that this Swampert's so low, it's not going to have any sort of defensive switch value. So I'm willing to take the substitute versus this Tyranitar to get myself into Torrent range. Fortunately for me, they switched to Celebi here, so I'm going to get a nice Endeavor off, which is going to sort of stop their Celebi from being able to do what it needs to do for this team, which is pass a Swords Dance, presumably to Aerodactyl, possibly even to Salamence. And I land my Hydro Pump and destroy that Celebi. Aerodactyl comes in, and it is faster than Swampert. I am going to choose to save my very low HP Swampert at this stage. The reason being is that Torrent boosted Hydro Pump can do a lot of damage to Tyranitar or Metagross later in the game, and Raikou not really doing much for me. I'm going to go to Tyranitar and Dragon Dance, as that Choice Banded Aerodactyl is not able to do much to me. I'm going to Dragon Dance again, because the only way that this Tyranitar is beating me is if it has Focus Punch, but Focus Punch plus Dragon Dance is extremely rare. Only sickos run that. I have run that before. So I will get to +2, which is now faster than Aerodactyl. They do reveal Salamence as their last, which is going to sort of intimidate Cycle on me. But that's kind of okay, because I'm already at +1, so I can do really, really nasty things, just as is. They cycle another Intimidate onto my Tyranitar, and then I make a really, really bold play, which is to Dragon Dance as they switch to Metagross. Earthquake is now killing the Metagross. They have to go to Salamence to drop my attack. I will just go for Rock Slide. If they were bulky enough, they could have lived that, but that doesn't matter because they can't go for a Dragon Dance of their own, which is the only thing that was really threatening to win the game for them in this position. Reason being is that I hit them with Rock Slide, leave them at really low HP. They go for Dragon Dance. I'm still faster because I'm +3 speed. So now they go to Aerodactyl. They have to dodge a Rock Slide. They don't, and I win the game. So pretty nice by me. I will admit I did need to see this team in action before I could beat it, because I did lose to it the first time I played. I sacrificed my Tyranitar to this Metagross, and then I realized that, oh, my Raikou's not that effective because they have Magneton and Celebi as potential switch-ins. They were trapping my Registeel to stop it from being able to get nice Thunder Waves into Aerodactyl or Salamence, and then, yeah. But knowing the team, I was able to navigate around it a little bit. That was 2 examples in a row where I switched the lead Tyranitar, which is not something that you should be doing all that often. Usually you want to trade. Let's see if this is an example of one where we do that. No. So Swampert is the worst possible lead you can see with this team, because your aim is to have this Tyranitar chip down the Swampert so that it's dead to pretty much everything else on the team, so that Salamence doesn't have to deal with it. But lead Swampert is going to be annoying. So I go to Celebi, who is pretty nice into a lead EndPert. They go for Roar in the case that I would either spam Recover or start going for Calm Minds, but I get my Swampert in. This should be a speed tie because they are also an Endeavor Swampert, as indicated by not having leftovers and clicking Substitute like that. I'm going to try to get the speed tie and get a Toxic off. I don't get the speed tie, but they don't go for Substitute, which is probably the right play for them. They shouldn't be going for Substitute there. They get damage off with Surf, which doesn't even 2-hit my Swampert, so this is where Hydro Pump is superior. But now that I have the Toxic on their Pert, it's kind of dealt with. I could go to Celebi, and I'm threatening to Recover spam, although I don't actually have Recover on the Celebi. So they're not really able to switch in. Also, I would outspeed them and get a Giga Drain off if they would do that. But I'm going to go for a Calm Mind now, in case they switch to something that Celebi can punish. Unfortunately, they go to Blissey, which is not a Pokemon that I can very effectively punish. I go to Tyranitar, who luckily dodges the Sing, which means I can Dragon Dance. They'll Sing, hit it that time, but I'm at +1/+1. So I can go for a Rock Slide and get a lot of damage. If I get a flinch on the Blissey, then they're screwed, and they go for Sing. So I know that their team is very, very weak to Tyranitar if they're risking that. I can go for Earthquake, which is going to get a consistent kill on Blissey. It also hits the Swampert for a nice KO itself. I'm going to go for Dragon Dance in case this Salamence does not have Brick Break, but unfortunately it does. If it didn't, I'd probably just win the game right there, because Earthquake does not kill the Tyranitar. I go to Registeel, which threatens the Thunder Wave, which is going to be just as bad as losing your Salamence. And they go to Claydol. So, yeah, Claydol is one of the Pokemon that can be annoying for Salamence to sweep, especially our Salamence, which does not have HP flying to hit it for solid damage. So what we do is we leave the Registeel in and go for counter. Unfortunately, they low roll their Earthquake and they're not going to die there. But I can go for Seismic Toss to try to pick up the kill. Then they reveal Charizard, which is not nice. I'm going to stay in and try to stop the Charizard from getting a substitute off. Unfortunately, it doesn't work out. I don't know what their item is, but I did notice with my handy dandy calculator that a Blaze Range Flamethrower from Charizard was pretty much guaranteed to put my Swampert at whatever HP it was at into Salic range. So rather than sack my Registeel there, I'm going to use this as an opportunity to get my Swampert in to make it really dangerous now. They're going to sack their Claydol to my Hydro Pump to try to get, I thought, a Blissey entry, but they actually have Jolteon. I'm going to save my EndPert, which is, again, it's not very easy to tell whether you should be saving or sacking your EndPert. My thought was that this could still be really annoying for their Blissey. So I was going to save it as for the Blissey, and it could also just be sacked later, potentially to the Charizard if I'm in a sticky situation with it. So I go to Celebi, which I thought might wall Jolteon, but it reveals HP Ice. So now I kind of have to sack the Celebi, but that's kind of okay because Celebi wasn't really doing much into this quartet of Pokemon. I will go to Raikou, who is going to be able to get a Calm Mind in front of this Jolteon at the cost of getting Thunder Waved. My opponent is just allergic to using Leftovers, it seems, as this is another Pokemon on the team that does not have Leftovers. I go for Crunch, trying to catch a either Jolteon staying in or a switch to pretty much anything, but Blissey will come in. And now I can go to Swampert, who can go for a Hydro Pump and die. The thought being here that Endeavor is not going to be helpful if this Charizard switches in, and if that Charizard switches in, then I'm going to be forced to sack my Pert. So I will go for Hydro Pump to stop that from being from happening 80% of the time. And if I land the Hydro Pump into Blissey, that'll at least put it into Brick Break range for my Salamence. And I'm going to go for Dragon Dance because I think that they're a mono Blissey. Or if they're not, they might be a bold Blissey, and I might live Ice Beam anyway with my special defense investment. But I'm pretty sure that they're a mono Blissey. I've run this sort of Sing Blissey set before, and it's not super duper common that you have Ice Beam, but it is possible. But this is kind of a Hail Mary play by me, to be honest. But I was decently confident they didn't have Ice Beam. And I dodged the Sing, which is lucky. I'm not going to lie. Because now it means that I get free reign to do a lot of damage to this team here. Now I'm faster than Jolteon, so Jolteon's never going to be a revenge killer to me. That Salamence, best you can do with that is Rock Slide. And it's possible they even dropped it for Brick Break, depending on what they're valuing with their team. I don't think they did. I think they dropped Earthquake, but still possible. Meaning that Salamence is not threatening to kill my Salamence, so I can go for a DD. As they switch to Charizard, which is not great for them, I will go for Brick Break not because I thought Blissey was going to switch in, but because I don't have HP Fly. I don't have a more consistent move to kill the Charizard. I don't want to risk the game on missing my Rock Slide and they go for something like HP Ice. That would be bad. But now I'm a +2 Salamence in the face of this chipped Salamence. I'm going to go for another Dragon Dance. As they go for a Dragon Dance, And they're basically playing for me to miss my rock slide here, which I don't do. So GG to that. And they don't have a way to win the game anymore. So yeah, a little bit. I had to play a little bit risky there. I had to get lucky and dodge a sing. But play to your outs, especially when you're using an offense team like this. Sometimes you don't have a better play, and maybe there was a better play. Maybe I sleep sack the Registeel, and make something happen like that. That actually maybe was the play, but you know, all that matters is this little message at the end. So no, that is not true. I mean, definitely just try to make the best plays, but at the time, I thought that was the line. Maybe there was a play to sleep sack the Registeel, but if I go to Registeel and they miss Sing, then it gets awkward, right? All right, lead Tyranitar versus lead Tyranitar. This is literally what you're supposed to do here. You Dragon Dance, they go to Swampert, you Earthquake, and then you Double Edge. They are probably a Surf defensive Swampert, so this could be El Clasico by my opponent. But yeah, notice how I get them down to about 30% HP, which is plenty low enough for my Hydro Pump to kill their Swampert. If this is El Clasico, I know they don't have a good water type switch in. So we can just kind of go for the Hydro Pump with not very much worry. They're going to opt to sack their Swampert here, which is not what you want to do versus Slop. You want to keep that Swampert as much as possible. They go to Tyranitar here, which happens to be a mixed Tyranitar with Hidden Power Grass that does not kill Swampert. And I just land all my pumps. I'm getting kind of lucky with that. And just destroy their Tyranitar. So this EndPert got a lot of value. It finished the Swampert and killed the whole Tyranitar. And got an entry point for the Salamence by forcing this Dugtrio in without even clicking Substitute or Endeavor. And sometimes that's just what you need is clicking these max special attack Hydro Pumps into your opponent. Salamence is going to be gross for their team. But I am going to do the same sort of play that I made before, which is double to Celebi, trying to catch whatever their Salamence switch-in might be. And it was Gengar, which is actually a nice matchup for my Blissey, because I can go for a Psychic. Unfortunately, they switched to Blissey, which is not a great Pokemon for me, but I get a Spadef drop, which means that I can potentially go for Calm Mind and outpace their damage with Giga Drain. Unfortunately, I'm not quite there. I'm going to need to get another Calm Mind here, but they might be going for Soft Boiled here. They don't, but I am kind of dangerous with this Celebi now because Giga Drain is going to heal me up 31%, which is more than their Ice Beam is dealing to me. And then they're going to just sack their Blissey here. So Celebi just 1v1 to Blissey. Think about that. Dugtrio's coming in. It's the only thing that can force this kill. Goes for Hidden Power Bug. Now, that means that I don't necessarily have to go to Salamence to punish this Dugtrio. And in fact, I won't. I will go to Registeel and try to force a Thunder Wave onto something. They reveal last one, Fortress, not wanting to take the Thunder Wave on Gengar. And I'm going to Seismic Toss into the Fortress to try to just stop it here. Now, one thing you'll notice about this team is that there are no spinners and only, I think, one Spike immunity. You might think that that's not good because spikes would be a problem, but the pace of the team, you're kind of just slamming Mons in, and you're just going to try to get early trade ups so that Salamence can win the game. So you don't really mind if a bunch of spikes go up. Now, that's not to say that spikes are not annoying for this team, but you don't have to be so crazy about stopping the spikes from getting up. I go for a Thunder Wave, trying to predict a Gengar switch into my Seismic Toss, but unfortunately we don't call it. We do get a full paralysis there on the Fortress, and I'm going to take the kill on Fortress so that I don't end up losing any more HP here. Gengar comes in. It's going to have to taunt me, And I'm going to take that turn to go for Thunder Wave anyway, so I can get some chip healing on Registeel in case I need it. And then I can switch to Raikou, who will take the Will-O-Wisp, which I don't really mind all that much. They're going to go probably to Dugtrio here, who is going to take a critical hit crunch, and that ends the game. Dugtrio should live a non-crit crunch, and then it should be able to kill my Raikou. But then I can go to Salamence, and then there's a little bit of a 50-50 going on. I don't believe that +1 Rock Slide kills Gengar, but neutral Rock Slide should do over 50%. If I can land that into the Gengar, and then go to Registeel. Actually, no, that's not a winning line. Okay, I maybe would have had to play to get a Rock Slide flinch to actually win this game. Or, actually, I could stay in versus the Gengar. If it goes for an Ice Punch, I live it, and then potentially have another opportunity to get my kill with Rock Slide. So, that could have also been a win condition for me there. In any case, if I was able to kill that Gengar with Salamence, last Mon Dugtrio is not going to win. It has to use probably Rock Slide to kill my Salamence, and if I have Registeel left, obviously Registeel's winning that. And if they go for Earthquakes, trying to predict the Registeel switch, well then obviously Salamence will win that. So that could have been a loss for me, especially if I didn't get that critical hit with Crunch, but I think I still had outs to win the game, so we'll take it. It was still full health on Salamence, right? Yeah, okay. Last game, this is against RS Swept, who is topping the ladder very consistently right now. They're 1773. I am 1607 at the time of playing this. I don't show the replays necessarily in order of when I do them. And obviously I don't show every replay that I played with the team. Sometimes I win and I don't really get a great showcase of the featured Pokemon. And then I never lose. So, well, sometimes I lose. And sometimes I post it if it's still a good learning opportunity. But we'll see what happens in this game. Against lead Skarmory, I like to Dragon Dance and then go for Rock Slide. If I get a flinch on them, they're sometimes 2-hit KO'd from that. So that's nice, but I miss my Rock Slide, so great luck to start out the game. As I end up with Raikou in, I'm going to go for a Calm Mind, because usually Skarmory wants to switch there. They happen to switch to Jolteon, which is not great for me, but I can get a +1 Crunch off, get a Spadef drop. I don't think that really matters that much, but yeah. It does matter a little bit, though, because I can go for Hidden Power Grass, and that manages to catch the Tyranitar switching in. I probably still would have made that play regardless, but a little bit less risk there. I will go to Salamence, which gets the Intimidate drop on this Tyranitar, who locks into Earthquake. They didn't have an item, so I'm guessing that they might be a Lumberry Dragon Dance Tyranitar, but it's also possible that they could be Choice Band. I will go for a Dragon Dance as Skarmory switches in, and then I'm going to take my Rock Slide damage. They don't opt to go for Toxic, which could have been bad if they went for that in hindsight. But I will get my Registeel in. They are able to block my Thunder Wave, which is not good for me, and then they're going to get all their spikes up. I'm just going to Seismic Toss into the Skarmory. There's not really much I can do to stop them from getting their spikes. My one Pokemon that is threatening the Oko, Raikou, is paralyzed, and they have a Jolteon to switch into, so that's not nice. As Gengar comes in, forced kind of to taunt my Registeel so they don't get Thunder Waved, I can go to Raikou, and I can land a Crunch as they go to Metagross, which has leftovers. Agility meta is nasty, so I'm going to stay in to try to get a Thunderbolt off on it in case it wants to go for Agility. And I sack the Raikou. That's the thing with offense teams. You have to be willing to sack Pokemon, even like really high HP Pokemon like that Raikou, so that your opponent does not have like a chance to set up and win the game versus your very frail Pokemon. But I do have a Swampert entry opportunity versus this Metagross. and I can go for Hydro Pump, which catches the Gengar. See, the thing about EndPert, and I've kind of touched on this before, but this is like a perfect example here. You don't want to be clicking Substitute all the time. If I click Substitute into this Gengar, right, I would have 25% less HP than I do right now, which would put me at about, what, 59%. I would still go for Hydro Pump to get my chip damage on the Gengar, and they would go for whatever move they have to break my Substitute. I can't really afford to stay in with the Swampert because I'm not going to be able to get more substitutes versus the Gengar. Plus, one Torrent boosted Hydro Pump against a full health defensive Gar like this is not going to kill. So the best thing that I can do is just take my damage on the switch and then switch this Swampert out, which I was gonna have to do anyway. But now my Swampert has more HP, which means that it can still switch into Tyranitar or Metagross later in the game. And we'll see if that comes into play. I can go to Celebi here on a Hidden Power Grass, so that's really nice for me. And then as Skarmory comes in, I nail it with a Hidden Power Fire. So come on, pat myself on the back for that one. Good call out. I'll go for Hidden Power Fire again just to finish off that Skarmory. They won't be able to get the third layer up, which is in some cases good because I might be able to get my Registeel more involved if it's not taking all of those layers of damage. Also good just to keep Swampert and Tyranitar a little bit healthier in case I need them. But yeah. Now Metagross is going to come in, goes for a Meteor Mash into my Celebi, but that's not a fantastic place to be because now Registeel is threatening a Thunder Wave into whatever is the switch in. It happens to be Tyranitar, which does have a Lumberry, but this is a good spot for me anyway because I can go for another Thunder Wave, which neutralizes this Tyranitar. It's not going to be able to set up to win the game. I am going to just take Seismic Toss damage and sack my Registeel so I can get my Tyranitar in, who goes for Earthquake to kill their Tyranitar. Now they reveal Swampert, who is the bastard Pokemon for this team. I'm going to just decide to take my Earthquake damage into the Swampert so that I can get maybe a Celebi entry, and then it's like not a fantastic spot for them because if I Psychic and they switch to either Jolteon or Gengar, then that's really bad. If they stay in and I Leech, Giga Drain, that's really bad. And if I go for a Hidden Power Fire into Metagross, that could also be really bad. But they go for Substitute, so they reveal that they're also Endeavor Swampert. It's the new craze that all the kids are playing with nowadays. But given that that's the case, I'm going to go for a Dragon Dance. If they go for a Substitute, then I can outspeed and get the break on their Substitute. If they were Surf, they were not very likely to kill me, which they happened to show that they were Surf there. So that's kind of cool and interesting. And if they were Hydro Pump, well, whatever. I still get my Celebi, which was kind of the plan from the get-go. But now I'm +1. They don't have a Substitute up. I can go for whatever move I want. Double Edge had a chance to kill. However, I identify that one of the ways that I can lose this game is to put the Swampert into range for like a Salic Torrent boosted Hydro Pump or Surf, into my Tyranitar, and then getting like Endeavor value into Celebi or Swampert. So I go for Rock Slide, in part fishing for a flinch, which would just win the game for me. Also in part because I don't want them to just naturally get into range. So they're going to go for Surf because probably they didn't expect me to click Rock Slide. If they went for Substitute there, I guess I was boned. But if I went for Earthquake, they would be outside of Substitute range, so that wouldn't be great for them. But now I'm in a situation where I can get my Swampert in. If I win the speed tie, I kill their Swampert, and now they have to switch to Gengar. I can go to Salamence on their Gengar, going for Hidden Power Grass. This is not a hard and fast rule, but usually Hidden Power Grass Gengar does not have, especially if they reveal Taunt as another move, does not have Ice Punch. It's really hard to fit because you want, if with Taunt, you want Will-O-Wisp so that you don't get completely owned by Blissey. And with a grass move, you want something that can hit a steel type. So usually you're running either Thunderbolt or Fire Punch. Usually Hidden Power Grasp is paired with Fire Punch, whereas Giga Drain would be paired with Thunderbolt. Identifying that, I know that I'm decently safe to switch into Salamence here, and they go for Hypnosis, which is not what I was expecting at all. So that's an awkward spot to be in. But I get the first turn Wake Up and a Dragon Dance, which is basically going to end this game here. I can go for Earthquake. I don't even have to predict because this Gengar is in Rock Slide range, so it doesn't really matter. I'll go for Earthquake, get my damage on Metagross. Don't quite get the kill. They go for Agility, but Leftovers reveals that I'm faster, and I get the kill with Earthquake there. So that's kind of fire. Agility Metagross usually is going to be fast enough to outspeed Aerodactyl after an Agility. It does not usually outspeed a +1 Salamence because Salamence is running enough speed most of the time to outspeed Adamant Heracross, right? So 270. So 270 times 1.5, we're doing math, is going to get you to 405 speed. If that was the standard Agility Metagross, they're probably 198 speed. Times 2 gets them to 396, so I am faster than that. Now, one of the things that I like to do personally with Agility Metagross is to make it so that I will outspeed the standard DD Ments if I get an Agility off. So for that, they would need to run 203 speed, which is a speed tier you should be familiar with if you know the bulky DD variant of Tyranitar. It's doing the same thing, where it's aiming to get the +2 speed so that opposing Salamence cannot DD in the face of Tyranitar. So with that, they would hit 406 speed, which is faster than our 405. But with this Salamence, I run 271 speed, actually, which puts us also at 406. It would have been a speed tie in that case if they were that fast, and that might have been lucky that I won 2 speed ties in a row. But if it's just the standard Agility Metagross, then we were faster than it guaranteed anyway. And that's how I won 29 ELO above 1600 against one of the best players on ladder. So I'm glad that we got to show that off. This has been the Endeavor Swampert video. I hope that we got to see some really interesting things that it can do. As you see, a lot of my opponents are running it because we're all smooth-brained individuals who need Fredazi to build for us to get to high ladder ranks. But yeah, no, I mean, the Endeavor Swampert set is so cool. It does suck to have a shaky rock resist in your Swampert because you don't have that HP investment. You do have Registeel as a little bit of an alternative. It at least helps you to not lose to an Aerodactyl spamming a Rock Slide. So that's good. But yeah, it's not going to fit on every team. I would not try Endeavor Swampert on these bulkier balanced teams or like Stall or anything like that. But on these offense teams, it can be really enabling. As you can see, it either is going to trade or force your opponent to switch into something that is not going to be nice for your other Pokemon, or it can just get a lot of damage with its Hydro Pumps. And you can win a lot of games without nailing that 1 HP Endeavor, which I hope I've shown off here. So yeah, that's been the Endeavor Swampert video, and we will see you all for the next video.